now.
Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. We're a little bit late getting started due to some technical difficulties, so it's 5:13, and I'd like to call the open session of the Police Services Board meeting a go here. So we are on item 6.1, which is the OPS diversity letter. And this letter was sent on behalf of the board to our guest tonight, who is Chief Superintendent Dwight Pierre. And I won't read the letter, but essentially for people who are watching online, it was a motion from the board and a wish from the board that as we transition to a new service model, that those that are hired represent the diversity of Orangeville. And in the note, we also suggested it would be wonderful to meet with Mr. Pierre and have a discussion and have a little bit of a question and answer and a get to know each other session as well. And that note was sent on June 24th. And here we are just a few weeks later. And thank you, Mr. Pierre, for agreeing to join us today and have a further discussion. So, from the board, could I have a motion to receive that letter?
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Mary and Sandy, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. So I'd like to move on to item 6.2, which is our guest speaker, OPP Chief Superintendent Dwight Pierre. And again, thank you, Mr. Pierre, and it's lovely to see you live and meet you virtually. So appreciate you joining us. For those in the public, what we have done is the board has collectively contributed to a list of questions that we thought might be of interest, and we'd like to gain an understanding of Mr. Pierre's position and the OPP's position on some of these items. They were provided ahead of time so that certainly you weren't caught flat-footed, sir. And, you know, I guess I'll turn the floor over to you in just a second, but I thought maybe you could give a little assessment of things, and then if the board had further questions or clarifications based on what was sent to you, the board could ask those. But I thought it might be nice if we all introduced ourselves to start, and maybe we'll go around as a board, Mr. Pierre, and introduce ourselves, and then perhaps you could do the same. So my name is Todd Taylor. I'm a counselor here in town and fortunate enough to be the chair of the Police Services Board, and relatively new at that. We've been at it about 2 years now. We're halfway through our mandate, and very interested in what the future holds for our town as we go forward. So why don't I turn it over to, I'm struggling if I want to be respectful, if I should go to our mayor or our vice chair. How about the two of you fight it out?
Vice Chair.
Okay, very good. Vice
Chair.
Chair, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
My name is Ian McSweeney. I'm vice chair of the board. I'm a retired lawyer who is currently the chair of the Financial Services Tribunal of Ontario, which deals with hearings relating to certain regulated sectors like insurance, mortgage brokers, pensions, and certain health service providers.
Very good. Mayor Brown, you want to?
Yeah, Mayor Sandy Brown. I'm a member of this board due to my position on council, and looking forward to hearing what Mr. Pierre has to say today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Rose, would you like to?
Okay. Mary Rose, retired teacher and provincial appointee on the board. Nice to meet you.
A pleasure.
Thank you. And lastly, Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm a provincial employee on the board. I'm a small business owner here in town. I look forward to hear what you have to say today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. And also on the line, sir, we have Chief Kalinsky and Deputy Chief Guilfoy, who are also part of our organization. So anyway, why don't I turn it over to yourself?
Certainly. Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and join in your meeting. By way of introduction, I'm a 31-year member of the OPP, and I have I started my patrol duties in our western region, down around the London area. I worked in small town Ontario, Petrolia, Lucan. I worked through the investigative ranks in our organization as a detective constable and detective sergeant. I had experiences that took me up to Huron County and Goderich area, and worked throughout West Region in that role. And I was very fortunate to get transferred up to Central Ontario relatively later in my career. In my 26th year, I came up to Central Region as a superintendent, and I was here for a brief stint, actually only 15 months, and I was moved over to the Chief Firearms Office, where I was the Chief Firearms Officer for a little more than 2 years. And I was fortunate as of January of this year to take command of Central Region as the Chief Superintendent. And it was nice to get back in the region and back in the field. So I'm looking forward to, we've already, as I don't have to remind you, had a bit of a challenging time already with respect to our health emergency and navigating all of the intricacies of it as a workforce and as a police service. So, you know.
That's great. It has been a difficult year. There's no doubt about that. In terms of kind of the questions and answers, do you want me to go through and ask them of you and then you share, or what would you think would be best for you, Mr. Pierre?
Well, I wanted to, there's about 27 questions here, and I think the one, if I may, I know the final question, 27, if you will, kind of speaks to the detachment commander, which I think is probably on everybody's mind. So, Mr. Chair, if you wouldn't mind me kind of moving there.
That'd be great.
I'd like to advise that we too believe it's an important piece of the transition, and we're going to name an interim detachment commander as of August. Nicole Randall is our staff sergeant, presently the detachment commander at Dufferin location, and I think Nikki certainly has much detachment experience, and she will, I think, be an excellent member to help us through the transition. We are, of course, going to have to move to a competitive process, and we will get to that certainly as soon as possible, and invite candidates to compete for that position. And of course, as a board, with respect to that process, you would have representation on the selection panel for the process of selecting the detachment commander. So I don't know if that helps maybe lead into, you know, some of the other questions.
Very good.
That's great. Would how long, sir, would you anticipate that Ms. Randall would be interim with us?
I would have to say I don't think it will be very long. I think we have to the candidates are the applications were being evaluated this week. We do have to move to a rank determination process, which will also take place, and I understand that is scheduled for near the end of the month in August. So once that information is all known, and we'll be able to move ahead into a competitive process. So I think it's realistic to say this fall.
Okay, great. And would if it's okay with the board, I'll just keep going. Would Ms. Randall also continue in her old duties while she's interim, or?
She will not. It is certainly an important role, and we would look to backfill her position as the Dufferin commander with another member in the interim, so she can focus on this task.
Got it. And would she potentially go back, or how does that work within your organization? Would she move on to something else after a candidate? We know her well and think highly of her.
Yes, and what I would say is that certainly those choices will be up to Nicole, and she'll have to make those decisions as she moves ahead. And if she chooses to compete, then she may well elect to do that. I know she's very committed to the community and Dufferin, and she does a great job for us there.
She certainly does. I wonder if it would dovetail, since you're talking about HR issues, would it be fair to ask then about your complement in the hiring process for Orangeville, and are you thinking you'll have a full complement of people, and when would we know who those individuals are, that sort of thing?
Linda, can you, timeline wise, I think
the offers are scheduled to be made to the existing members the first week of September.
Okay.
And then from there on, Staff Sergeant Randall is putting together the operational plan to fulfill the complement while the Orangeville members are at the academy for the month of October.
yes. So we will have a staffing plan while the members are being trained, so that we will have members on the ground while that training is taking place.
That's great. Since you have these questions ahead of time, is there a process that you'd like to go through, or do you want us to?
I don't know if there are some that you particularly want to address, if it's, if there are some that are perhaps more burning than others. Otherwise, we can, I suppose, go through it. Is there anything particularly that you would like to touch on first, or do we go from 1 to 26? Well,
a curious one for us would be back to relationships for me, and it's on the list, is you're dealing with 5 people who want to serve their community in the best way they can, and obviously work well with your organization. Would you have any mentoring for us on how best to move forward with your organization as we change, kind of the compiling of our board, right?
Yeah, I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there more to that?
No. Just what's the best way to work with your organization from a board level and your expectations?
I would say the bottom line on that is the detachment commander. The detachment commander clearly plays a key role in this as far as the contact. We would consider the detachment commander in line with your chief of police as far as being a local contact, as far as being the person responsible for the day-to-day operations of policing in the town of Orangeville, and that would be the immediate link, of course, for collaboration and sharing of information, discussing community objectives and projects that you would like to undertake and collaborate on. So that's certainly that would certainly be our position as far as the immediate contact with your PSB, and I think it's worked well in a number of areas. And I know one of the questions maybe this leads in is, the various projects that could be undertaken. We have I grabbed one particular project from a nearby location, Nottawasaga, and this was a collaborative effort between the detachment and the police service board there, and it's a publication that they did. It's the Nottawasaga Community Report, and they took a look back at 2019 in the local community and the various activities that were undertaken. And in fact, they have the third page of the publication is a picture of their police services board and a statement and a message from their PSB about their role in the community and how they collaborate with the local detachment. I think there's going to be much opportunity for that type of collaboration by way of an example. And I think that the relationship with the detachment commander is really a key relationship with the PSB and for the PSB there.
That's great. Well, we look forward to working with Nicole in the interim anyway. If any other board members have a question, we can do that. If not, why don't I just start at the top here in terms of the way they're ordered, and we'll start to work our way down, and perhaps others will be answered as we go, and we can skip them as we decide. So for those on the phone and don't have the list in front of them, the question is talking about violent crime, and it speaks to target reductions of 2% were set for overall violent crime and overall property crime. Were those goals achieved?
Yes, and this is referring to our 2017-2019 plan. And what I'd have to say is that all of our goals were not achieved throughout the region, but we certainly we had some we did have some excellent results, but we're really in Central Region, we have a lot of areas of growth, and this is contributing to growth in population, which brings along with it certain challenges. And you'll be aware that we recently transitioned Midland Police Service into Central as well, and these do affect our I guess results as far as clearances go. Some of the concerns that we have had with our action plan is we have had an increase in the reporting of sexually related offenses, and with more reporting comes greater numbers to investigate. And there's also been we've had a lot of online fraud that also is a pervasive crime. But generally speaking, in the Dufferin area, we had a decrease in overall property crime of 22%, and we had our violent crime increased by about 10 occurrences there. So it wasn't the numbers were not large in that particular area.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that. The next, if any board members have anything, feel free to interject. The next question talks about community satisfaction surveys and linking in, I guess, with the public and making sure that we're delivering on, I guess, what the public is thinking is important to them. Will you do this in Orangeville, and what kind of frequency and process would you roll out if so?
Yeah, the community satisfaction survey. It's a key measure that we use to monitor public opinion and the OPP's effectiveness. And we would continue to the. It is a cyclical thing as far as the provincial. I'm sorry, the provincial survey. Is done once a year, and in an effort to improve its ability to measure public trust and confidence, the satisfaction and satisfaction with its mission, the OPP. That's why we initiated it. Let me say there was there was no community satisfaction survey conducted in 2019. It will be conducted in 2020. I'm not sure. No, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty as far as with COVID still upon us. If it will be a, what it will reflect. We may get some different results. But the bottom line is the undertaking community satisfaction surveys. It's a great feedback tool, and we certainly would include Orangeville in those surveys. We'd be very interested. Certainly with it being a new area being served by the OPP, it's a very important feedback for us in providing service and tweaking areas of our service that we may need to pay more attention to, particular to Orangeville.
Got it. Thank you. How about prison care and control? Could you share with us your procedure for care and control of prisoners?
Well, prisoner care and control is, first of all, this is one of the most important things that we do as a police service. And prisoner care and control is a critical policy for the OPP. So we have a very extensive policy drafted that speaks to prisoner care and control. It speaks about all aspects of monitoring and caring for anybody that's in our custody. It also addresses all of the security and security issues and the needs of the prisoner that's in custody at the time, and that relates to medication provision, the provision of food, the provision of privacy, and this is a very big issue as it relates to human rights, of course, when somebody's in custody. Even the act of using the facilities in the cell in a video monitored situation, we have to be in touch with that. And the privacy concerns of the individual. And so the policy addresses a broad scope of what we deal with when we have a prisoner in custody. We do use a DVR system that monitors, provides video monitoring of prisoners in our custody. And that goes along with the proper signage to ensure that the person's properly informed that they will be monitored under those circumstances.
One of the issues that we're experiencing as a town right now is there is some loose animals in neighborhoods and causing a bit of a nuisance and a concern for some of the people in the area. And just curious, what's your stance on that? And how can charges be laid? Is it just after there's been an infraction, or would charges proactively be laid in a situation like that?
Yeah, well, certainly, I guess there could be, and I think we've seen it with COVID, we seem to be overrun by many animals, some of the wild animals that might not be seen, but certainly with respect to domestic animals, and in particular dogs, we do have the Dog Owner Liability Act to rely upon, and it does not require it doesn't require that a dog bites a person to take action. It says that if an owner doesn't exercise reasonable precautions, that action could be taken in those cases. And this might relate to having the animal on a leash and under proper control. So that may be a concern to the residents. And police officers can enforce that as a provincial statute. With respect, I guess on a broader note, they now have they do have an office with respect to animal control at the ministry, and the chief inspector there deals more with cruelty to animal cases and that type of thing. So there was some change in the laws, and that office was formed. So it is there as well to support on animal issues of that type.
Okay. Why don't I try and combine 5 and 6? You know, as a counselor in this town, I can tell you we get numerous complaints about safety in different areas, and our Orangeville Police Service has been excellent in terms of follow-up and, you know, trying to educate and whatnot. And I'm curious, you know, how would that relationship work with the OPP? And number 2 to that, trying to combine some things, is how would the OPP feel about cameras and specifically red light, that sort of thing? I wonder if you could speak to that whole idea.
Sure. Well, thank you. We certainly support any technology that can support public safety. It's certainly evolving, and it appears to be helpful in changing some behaviors of drivers. So we would, but we do believe that it should be evidence-led as far as perhaps where those technologies are utilized. I think for obvious reasons. And we have a number of locations that have school safety zones and traffic calming areas, and various road markings and other various technologies help to define where those areas should be in relation to our public buildings and certainly schools and parks. We do have black cat technology that we utilize to help measure speed and give us some of that hard evidence that we can determine, you know, that's the best location. And certainly that's a collaborative effort that can take place between, again, through the detachment commander and the detachment to identify those areas where we need to be enforcing, where we need to be visible, where we need to be present, and we need to be taking proper enforcement action when that's what's called for.
That's great. How about attendance at community events, Mr. Pierre? You know, that was a concern as we were going through the costing. You know, now we have our Orangeville Police Service quite visible at these events, and there was questions about paid duty and whether or not OPP officers would be able to go to some of these events. You know, what's your thoughts on community and paid, and will we be able to have your officers servicing these events?
Well, I would say categorically, we certainly will have our officers present. I think there's 2 pieces here. With respect to attendance at events, depending on the event, this may be something that is a part of our patrol strategy. I mean, if we have a number of people gathering, this may be a part of the regular patrol strategy and visibility strategy locally. And I can assure you certainly that our officers attend myriad events throughout the region and throughout the year. It's often a time where we have an opportunity to have our officers there, perhaps have some equipment present that might not normally be seen in use in the community. And for familiarization purposes, in the winter we often attend events with our snow machines, and we'll have officers there that are operators of those machines. We may have ATVs available, either working the event or there for display purposes as well. And that's often a great stepping off point for interaction with the public. But with respect to the pay duties as well, there's obviously that opportunity if, particularly with larger liquor licensed events, and this year is an anomaly, but of course we have some very large scale events throughout Central Region, certainly Boots and Hearts up at Burrows Creek, the Havelock Jamboree, and we have a robust plans that accompany those events, and we have certainly high visibility of those events, and that's both regular and pay duty members. So that's something I think the general rule of thumb would be: the larger the event, the quicker we get on it and we get into the planning process. And again, there's opportunities for us, the local detachment commander, to work with the event planners and look at the best possible response to any given event.
Got it. What board members?
Can I interject for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I was just going to ask.
Through you, if we could ask Mr. Pierre, what what is the timeline in terms of booking paid duty officers so that the public will know this and our event coordinators will know this?
I guess what I would recommend is as soon as possible, because, and I say that for a number of reasons. It helps with the planning process, and it really it will help us to navigate depending on the scale of the event. And in the case of a large-scale event, there's opportunities for the local detachment commander to reach out to neighboring detachments from a pay duty standpoint, so that we can continue with our regular operations locally, but also look after any pay duty requirements at the particular event. What we don't want to do is get into a position where we're doing last-minute things and trying to where we're impacting on operational concerns because of the event that's arisen. So the sooner we can get to the planning, guaranteed the better the outcome with respect to the provision of officers.
That's great.
Thank you.
Board members, I'm just going to continue to skip down, and if I miss something that you think was relevant or interesting, please feel free to interject. So I think for town council and for this board and many citizens, they're watching what's happening in Leamington and wanting to ensure that we have a positive experience and things go well. I'm curious if you had any comments or advice on how our town can ensure that we're working well with the OPP, and maybe any thoughts on that situation, or, you know, in a positive way. It's not an attack question.
No, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. And I think I can say that I have worked in Leamington, and as a detective staff sergeant, that was one of my jurisdictions of responsibility, and I've worked major cases in Leamington, so I'm familiar with the town. I'm familiar with the members that came over to the OPP as well. What I would say is I think, and some of the other questions perhaps allude to it, is communication, and that collaboration remains key to the entire situation. And I think strong communication and working together, making our needs known, asking a question when it needs to be asked, so that we don't go into some ambiguous territory. Again, collaborating with the local detachment commander and making sure that we are on the same page and that we're moving in the same direction. And if tweaks need to be made, let's have those discussions, and let's see if we can work towards solutions. I can't speak to the entire, certainly in the entire situation in Leamington. It's regrettable when there's any lack of satisfaction with OPP service, and we want to ensure that it remains optimal. Certainly for Orangeville, and so I'm not sure all of the background in Leamington, but I think key to the equation is that regular and solution-based communication with the detachment commander.
Okay, very good. Another issue that I think is on Orangevillians' minds is towing. You know, we've got a system in place here now where, you know, the OPS works with the Towing Association, and there's a list, and it basically prohibits racing and the accidents and aggressiveness that can occur on scene with that. And town council is working at improving a bylaw, and I know that the Ontario government is working on doing the same. And I'm just curious what your take would be on that for our community.
Well, I'd have to say it sounds to me like you're certainly going in the right direction, and these are tactics that have been used by other communities. It is, I would say, a provincial concern, and many communities share the same concern. It's not the easiest issue, because we have a competitive market out there. We have the need for the service, but it has to be controlled to the extent that it is not dangerous for anybody involved. It has to be effective so that we can serve the people that require that service, and that it can be safe working out on the roadside with these partners. Many of the towing companies are very professional. They desire an orderly approach, and again, I would emphasize that certainly the use of bylaws and regulation from that perspective, I think, is helpful. And I think when the rules are clear to the industry, then we go down the right path, and again, we get into a good collaborative mix that provides the best service to the citizens. So there has been a towing task force that you alluded to, Mr. Chair, struck provincially. So I'm curious about what they're going to come forward with when they finish their work. But there's the service provision. There's a little bit of the consideration for any of the criminal element. But as far as the racing goes, I think appropriate regulation and again, good communication, making sure that we're in partnership and everybody understands their role. And I think that is satisfactory to the industry, and we get the best possible service as well to the citizens. So it sounds like you're going down the right road, certainly.
Okay, very good.
So, Mr. Chair, just a comment on that. I think
yes.
I think it's implied by what you just said that another important factor is a collaborative effort between police forces. I mean, this is not a local issue. This is a regional issue. Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga. I mean, it's a organized crime. It's a wide-reaching issue that crosses county borders. So the collaborative aspect of getting at the towing problem, I think, is important. I just didn't want to skip over the bicycle patrols and the school programs. I think one of the things we constantly hear and did hear during the decision-making process, OPP versus our local OPS service, was police presence in town. Very important to our community to that the police be seen on the street, be seen, in our schools, and have a presence that is, friendly and familiar, but also, with an eye to safety and law enforcement. So I'm just wondering, Chief Superintendent, if you could just comment on, bicycle patrols, foot patrols, and what you're thinking you might be doing in terms of working with local schools to have a greater presence with the young students.
Okay, well, those are excellent points for sure, and certainly our interaction at all levels with the public is very important. I think some of the current in the current environment, some school boards are assessing whether or not they wish to have officers in their schools. What I can say is we have in a number of our communities officers that are very involved with the local schools, delivering various programs, the OPP Kids programs, and some detachments teach the DARE program with respect to drugs and that. Our officers in those situations have had, developed excellent relations with the faculty, with the students, and certainly my observations would say it seems to be a very positive thing. So I think that again, if that's something that's desired locally, that is not an uncommon practice, certainly by the OPP and the communities we police. But I appreciate and I respect the debate that may be going on at the various school boards as well for the various reasons they certainly have the right to have those discussions and reach decisions. But it certainly is not uncommon for us to run school programs and be present at elementary schools and at secondary schools. I'll just move from that with respect to the bikes and foot patrol. I totally agree with you. I think this is this is some grassroots a grassroots approach as far as policing goes. When the officers are on foot or they're on their bicycles, they're very exposed to the public. And I know that we have a number of robust bicycle programs. We do have a training program so that the officers have the appropriate training on the bicycles that they have. We do have particular equipment that is provided to officers for the purpose of cycling. And right now that area is being reviewed in cooperation with Central Region, and our provincial traffic operations are taking a look at our cycling program and to see how we can tweak it and improve it. A lot of that has to do with ensuring that we have the proper kit for our members and the proper equipment by way of the bicycles. It's not very good if an officer is cycling and doesn't have the appropriate equipment as per the Highway Traffic Act. So these are concerns that we want to make sure we are meeting. And I know that the officers that I've interacted with that have the opportunity to get out on the bike and on foot patrol certainly are able to tell stories of how that patrol differs and is much more intimate than patrol in a cruiser or any other type of mechanical of patrol vehicle.
Thank you.
Very good. I'm curious on two things, and I think I'm out of questions after this, fellow board members, but one is, Mr. Pierre, will you or any other senior officers visit our community on a regular basis would be one. And I guess the second one would be is what would be your anticipation of startup? So, you know, I almost view you, and this is a terrible analogy, but I view you as a new restaurant in town, and people are going to want to know what type of food you have and when you're open and that sort of thing. And it would be good to somehow let people in the community know that you're here and who is on your staff, and just some sort of communication plan, I guess, to kick things off and be friendly, right? Absolutely.
Two excellent points. Certainly a part of my leadership as far as the chief of the region goes. I do have responsibilities to all the locations. We have 13 locations in Central Region, and I make it a regular practice to get out to those locations and into the communities. So Orangeville would be no exception. I have been down to Dufferin. We had some new recruits come into Dufferin, and I was down to greet them and meet with them, welcome them aboard, and see them. It has been again something we had to be mindful about as we continue to distance. But what I've called them is the Chief's Garage Talks, and we've been outside when we can be meeting with staff at the various locations. And I find the personnel, it's an opportunity for them to see me outside of my office, in their backyard, if you will. And I find that we get some excellent communication going. And it certainly, as a region, supporting our detachments allows us to stay in tune with what's the buzz on the street. What are the members looking for? What can we do more of? And maybe what should we stop doing if it's having some negative effect? So I definitely intend to get down to Orangeville and meet with the detachment as I presently do with our current locations. As far as the communication strategy goes, I think you're absolutely right. And I think people deserve, the citizens certainly deserve to say, like, hey, what's this all about? Who are these people, so to speak? And we certainly have members that live in the Orangeville community. They're residents there. But it's sort of, when we get down to doing our work and we have this police office, people do wonder what that's all about. So I think that some type of open house is an appropriate thing. We'll have to continue to assess our COVID situation, but I think it's definitely something that needs to occur. When it could occur might be the question. I think we have the advantage of having some excellent social media that we can perhaps rely on to present messages to the public and make sure that we're interacting with them. And we have excellent community services officers, and we can provide support with that from a regional perspective as well. And if we can't, if we're not prepared yet to invite people in a physical way to the building as yet, we certainly can't have provisions where we could go outside, and maybe even if it calls for maybe a larger, an arena or some complex there, we can at least get the people into the mix, interacting with our people. So I think there are some real possibilities there, as well as using virtual interaction as much as we can, and telling our story and interacting with the community that way, to say, this is who we are, and we're keen to be here, and we're keen to work with you, and keen to interact with the community.
That's great. I think I don't speak for the board, but as 1/5 of the board, I imagine this board would be very interested in helping you with that as you come in and supportive. So please count on us for whatever we can do. Board members, is there anything further? Yes, Member Brown.
One of the questions on the list, Chief Superintendent, was about mobile crisis intervention teams. I've read that the OPP has this in about 60% of their detachments. This is where a healthcare worker, an expert in mental health issues, and a uniformed officer would be teamed together to make calls where mental health crisis or perhaps substance abuse issues are taking place. Is this something we can look forward to in our area?
I think I think it's absolutely something you could look forward to if that's something that you desire having. We've seen some very good results with the teams. There are some funding aspects. It certainly involves a cooperative between health as well as the police. I believe that Nicole Randall has already been examining some aspects of this through Dufferin Detachment, and has had some communication with the Canadian Mental Health Association for Peel Dufferin. So I think it's absolutely a possibility. And as I say, I can tell you that the relationships that our officers have made through that process with community members, some of our most vulnerable community members, have been extraordinary. And when COVID came in, certainly in some cases there were other demands on the health sector, and our members continue to interact with those members of our community. And I know basically it was steady as she goes through COVID, and there was a lot of demand throughout the health emergency thus far. So it's a great model, and we've seen some excellent interactions with that model.
May I have a quick follow-up, Chair?
Yes, please.
I heard anecdotally that I guess I'm going to call it client information. There's client information within the police service. There's client information within the healthcare sector, and that information isn't necessarily shared. Is that true? And is there any possibility that you could work towards sharing that information so that when when police officers arrive, they can see, that there's a history there. Again, I'm just as all anecdotal. I don't know what the truth is. Maybe you can shed some light on that in terms of sharing information between health care and police.
Yeah, I think essentially what we have when we use this model is the collaborative effort is that the health member is there for their expertise that they bring in that area, and that the police officer is there for the expertise they bring in their area. And I think excuse me, always any sharing of health information has to be held in the highest regard, and privacy has to be respected. So generally the situation would be that if the situation is safe, then we're going to have the healthcare member take the lead in that role and take care of that situation to the best of the ability and have a great interaction with the individual. I don't know if I'm being clear, or I quite understand. I take it you're saying about the sharing of information between the police and the healthcare worker.
Yeah. Well, within your sectors, because if a police officer shows up on scene at a mental health crisis and they don't understand the background and a potential history there, then it puts them at a disadvantage. So, and since both sector workers are sworn to secrecy, you wonder why you couldn't share that information amongst both sectors.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is, with respect to response, if it's a member of the community that we've dealt with before, then there quite likely will be police information that would be able to inform the officer and give them some guideline on how they might be approaching that situation from past occurrences, and I think that helps to assess for the officer in the case to assess their response to any situation like that.
Sandy, I think there's a bunch of exceptions under the protection of health information legislation that allows medical holders of health information to release that information absent consent in certain circumstances involving the safety and protection of individuals. So that's what I recall. I think there are live pieces of legislation that allow those interactions to occur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other board members? No, seeing none. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Pierre. I guess, how about this for a bizarre say goodbye question? What do your friends call you? Do they all sit around and say Chief Superintendent, or?
The answer is yes.
They might say I demand that, but no, Dwight is my name, and I certainly answer to it. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and it's great to get to know you. And I definitely will be down to see you in the flesh. And I'm as hopeful as everybody that we get out of the present circumstance as soon as possible and get back to some normal. But in any event, I really do appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing you in the future as well.
That's great. And Linda, we thank you for joining us as well. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pierre. Enjoy your evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Oh, Todd, just one thought before they go. I don't know if any members of the public are on with us. I'm just wondering if they might have a question.
Uh-huh.
We certainly can do that. Jan, would you have anything?
We do have one member of the public on the line with us. I'm not sure if they have a question, though. But we do have a member of the public on the line with us.
Okay. All right. So I think we're good. So thank you again, Mr. Pierre. Appreciate your time today. Very kind of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and take care of the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you. I think that was time well spent. I want to say something about how excited we are. How do you top that, Andrea? Now you're going to have to be engaging and tell little jokes and stuff. Do you think you can do that? So
well,
this.
What I try to do usually, which is just bring a quality update, and then we'll see if the comedy can flow from there. How about that?
That would be lovely. Thank you for that.
Okay.
So everyone, this is item 6.3, and we are going to get an OPP transition update from Andrea, and it's just a verbal.
Yes.
So, yes.
So I know the chief superintendent talked a little bit about recruitment, but I have part of that as well, so I'll reiterate it. Staff have continued to meet weekly with the OPP to ensure a smooth transition process. When we started this process, we mapped out what we thought all of the major deliverables or milestones were so that we could keep it on track, and we're currently still on target for the transition date. Uniform and civilian recruitment are proceeding, and the interviews for the civilians have been taking place, and we're expecting that the town will continue to get updates as we move through this process, but that remains on track as the chief superintendent had said. In terms of facility upgrades, the town has been working with the OPP as well as 2 different companies, Formworks and Baker Risks, and they work to create the final design plans for the facility renovations to meet the OPP's needs. A general contractor pre-qualification proposal went out previously to enable the selection of a renovations general contractor, and we pre-qualified them because of the security requirements naturally associated with the police building, and that is expected to close this week. The renovations are expected to begin in August and are scheduled to be substantially complete by early October. And the renovations currently are expected to remain within the town's budget. Asset management is another area that we've been working on with the OPS, and I just want to pause and thank them for their ongoing support through this entire process. They've been great to work with. I think we've kept the communications open. I know there's been a couple of times where we didn't always have all the information, but worked to get back to them as quickly as possible. But the OPP had done an evaluation of a number of the assets, and they put together a list. And so that the assets that will not be taken, the staff of the town are going to go through a disposition or transfer process, and that also remains on schedule. And then one of the items that we are currently have under discussion is communications planning with the OPP to ensure that we've got the appropriate messaging going out in the town, both leading up to and following the transition, including what the formal changeover will look like and the appropriate recognition for that. I realize I have different items, so I'm going to pause here and we'll save website and records transfer for those topics unless you want me to proceed. Up to you.
I was actually going to suggest to the board and to you, Chief Klinsky, I wonder if we just move 6.4 down until after, right in front of OPP Detachment Board composition. And we'll work through Andrea for now. It might make a little more sense to all of us.
Perfect.
Is there any questions on the transition update for Ms. McKinney? Yes, Member Brown.
Chair Taylor, through you to Ms. McKinney. Has there been any discussion about vehicles? I shared around Waterloo Regional Police have purchased 8 hybrid vehicles. Is there any discussion with OPP about the type of vehicles that will be constituting our fleet here?
I think we forwarded that on. That's certainly something we can bring back up with them and their acquisition of vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No? Okay. So I don't think we need to do anything with that. It's just a report, so nothing to receive or vote on. So let's skip to 6.5, board members, and I'll ask Ms. McKinney to speak to the PSB website and potential there.
Okay, so currently the PSB website is effectively an extension of the Orangeville Police website. We did have we connected with Carrie on the topic. Jason Hall, the manager of IT at the town, had gone through in advance to see the types of items that are contained in that site. Predominantly what we're seeing there are things like agendas, calendar, news, things of that nature. The town is currently in the process of developing and launching its own new website, and the timing is such that we could transition that material over to the town's website. It would be a logical thing to do, and then by extension, you would have access to our eScribe solution. I think the town clerk's also on the phone should you need any updates on that, but that would include agendas, minutes, and things of that nature in a much easier and more seamless way than we have done today. So we have those pieces launching around the same time at the town. They should be closely timed. The agenda software might come out a little bit in front of the website, but from a user perspective for the public, it will be definitely easier. So the town would be prepared to offer the Police Services Board its own section on our website that could be accessed, and including a question section or submit a question page that would then be forwarded off to Carrie. I mean, alternatively, you could pursue your own website, but there would undoubtedly be more costs associated with that, and its look and feel would be different.
Okay. I didn't realize that Ms. Landry was on the call. How exciting. Karen, did you have anything further to add to that? Do you think there's any complications for us, or is it your recommendation as well?
No, I don't see any complications at all.
Short and sweet. Like it. Okay. Any questions, fellow board members, for Ms. McKinney on this item? Yes, Member Rowe.
Not a question, more a comment to agree with her that it would be good if we had the same format and the same usage as the town, and then when people want to look for something, it's all the same right across the board. So I think that's a really good idea.
Agreed.
So my only concern would be the appearance of independence. I don't think it's a real concern, because in addition, it makes sense for us to have a link on the Town of Orangeville website that allows the users to easily access our page. In addition, if they're simply Googling us, I assume they will hit our page directly.
They should, yes, using service engine optimization. Yeah.
Yep. I think the benefits outweigh any potential drawbacks.
And Carrie would be your page administrator, and she would be trained to be able to update the content and have full creative control there.
Well, that's a benefit.
Right. Very good.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so that's the PSB. Board members, we're good? So, no further questions? Okay. So let's move on to item 6.6, which is the OPS records post-disbandment. And Ms. McKinney, you're going to talk to that.
Yes, so that was one of the items identified early on by the OPP that the town would need to manage. In our conversations with them, they have said that one of the items that has to take place is that the live or active operational records that are currently in the possession of the OPS would need to transition to and effectively become the property of the OPP. And that subsequently records that need to be maintained that are historical, such as administrative, have transitioned to town's responsibility in the other transitions that have taken place so far. So the town has been working with both the OPS and the OPP throughout this process, and the transfer remains on target currently. We have made room physically for the records that need to be kept in the vault to be in the vault, so that is happening, as well as IT has been working on the electronic records components, and we've been working with the OPP to understand their OPS retention policy so that we could be aligned following the transition.
There, Andrea, there'll be items that the Police Services Board will still have as ongoing items that are confidential and property of the board. How do you see that? Would we have issues getting at that, or how would we do that?
If the town has them physically, you mean?
Yes.
Karen's really our records expert, and she's been leading this project, this is the reason why I invited Karen to join me for this. Karen, do you have comments?
Well, with regard to the records, we can certainly, oh, that was perfect timing. Taylor.
That sounds really nice.
Yes. With respect to the records itself, they will be physically located at the town, and as Andrea did indicate, they would be, those that are of a sensitive nature would be located in the town vault, and other records would be located in our record center. With respect to access, we would have to look at what those records are that you're speaking to, Chair Taylor. Like, it would be best maybe if we had some discussion in terms of what records that you have identified or think that you would require access to post the transition.
Okay.
So Todd, sorry, it's Ian, if I might.
Yeah,
we've talked about
please.
this before. I think just to step back a step, there are two kinds of records, broadly speaking. There are the OPS records, the police records that the OPP needs to continue ongoing investigations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the second category is there are board records with respect to the previous and ongoing administration and operation of the board. The records retention bylaw and the legislation that currently governs those records makes it pretty clear that it's the board's records. And so I just, I don't think there's anybody challenging this, but I just think it's important for us to recognize that to the extent that the board is finding a solution to the retention and storage and the ability to call for those records from wherever they are stored, delegating that or deputizing the town to do that as a service provider that we are retaining. So we're not transferring ownership of those records. We're simply arranging through the town for their safe retention and storage.
So
just want to make sure that that's understood.
Through the chair, respectfully, and we can follow up with the province again, but we've been in discussions with the OPP on this, and I think just a note that this board will not transition directly as this board to the new, you're going to transition from being Section 38 to Section 10. Sorry, Section 31 to Section 10, right? And
Right.
So with that, there will be some changeover, and there are things that will not apply directly. And we can clarify that again with the province. And I appreciate what you're saying, Ian, but there is risk in the town not being able to access historical record or maintain and keep historical records that would have been associated with the OPS.
Well, I'm not challenging that. Anyway, we can get at this offline. I just think it's important, since the board is charged with responsibility for those records as it's currently constituted, it's important to follow that through in the transition with respect to wherever those records end up. And if we have to amend the bylaw to reflect the new situations under Section 10, so be it. But as it stands now, records to date, under the way this board is constituted, are clearly this board's responsibility.
We have two members, so Member Brown and then Ms. Landry, if you'd like to speak after Member Brown.
Yeah, the discussions that we've had leading up to this was that the Police Service Board should be establishing autonomy with respect to its records. And that means, I don't know what that means. That means maybe having it in the cloud, and that the records moving forward are accessible by the Police Service Board and not, in some other space that we don't have control over. And that's my only concern is, we've had instances where we were looking for information and it wasn't in our control. So, you know, whether we have a full a new start coming October 1st, where all records are kept in the cloud, I would prefer something like that personally. But you know, we're looking for autonomy here in these records, not oversight from some other body.
Ms. Landry?
I just wanted to build a bit on what Andrea did indicate. With respect to the transition itself, I think that what we're currently working on, as the board is aware, is just itemizing those documents that the board has in their possessions, and Carrie's completing that work for you. And as part of that process, Chair Taylor, we will be involving you and working with you. And of course, you can update the board accordingly and work with the board on the transition and of those particular records to the town. So there would be actual sign off by the board with respect to those records coming to the town, so that you would have a good understanding or a full view of what is transferring to the town and what will be kept at the town itself. And I think Andrea did also indicate that as those records do transfer, and they then fall under the actual retention policy of the town at the time of the actual transfer itself. And the retention policies that the board currently has, as you move forward as a different board, you would have to establish what your new retention policies will be.
Boy, I'm not, anyway, I think you should take this offline. I mean, I don't know how that dovetails with Section 254 of the Municipal Act.
Okay. Ms. McKinney, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I just want to, through the chair, agree with Ian taking some of this offline and understanding what the records are, because as an example, some of the records that the OPP said that they would expect the town to be keeping are financial, which are in our systems already, right? So I'm not entirely sure of the context, Mayor Brown, that you're referring to for not having access going forward, but some of this will be residual, leftover historical information, but we can seek further direction from the province and take it offline.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Andrea and Karen, for joining us. I really appreciate you doing that. And I know we're a bit later, but it was fun to listen to Mr. Pierre anyway, wasn't it? I think that's the end. You're welcome to stay or enjoy your evening, whichever you'd prefer. Okay, so why don't we move on? Chief Kalinsky, of course, has hopped out of his chair at this point. Oh, interesting.
He'll come back.
Oh, hi, Leah, you're there. Okay. Leah, did you want to speak to the mental health survey?
Actually, I have Mary Lou Archer.
No, you don't. How
yes, I
exciting.
do. Yes, I do. She's the resident expert, so here she goes.
It's a celebrity sighting here.
I'm going to jump out of the seat.
Okay. Oh, Mary Lou.
Hi there.
Hi,
Nice
good
to see
afternoon.
you. Yeah. Yeah, so are you going to speak to us about the mental health survey?
Was there specific questions that you wanted me to review, or would you like me to go through the entire survey? What are your thoughts?
How about just a general overview of, what are they trying to accomplish? What did you have to do as a team, that sort of thing? And, maybe what are the top 3 highlights of what we should know, like the Coles Notes version?
Okay, sure. I think
Yeah.
the province is trying to establish a baseline of what resources are available to the police and how do we utilize those resources, really dependent too on geography, what resources are available to different municipalities. So they're trying to pull as much information at this point to really establish a baseline and do some strategic planning moving forward. Some of the larger services have what's referred to as a COAST team, where a police officer is paired up with a mental health worker. And the COAST team stands for Crisis Outreach and Support Team. In their role, it can be more proactive or follow up to persons in mental health crises. And then there's also a different type of model called MCERT, and that's Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team. And that's where a mental health worker is responding with a police officer to a person in crises. And their role is to try and de-escalate the situation. And if it's deemed that the person requires medical attention, they would assist in facilitating that person getting to a hospital. So those are two of the models that exist out there. And generally, they're in larger centers where there's higher volume of mental health calls. Here in Dufferin, we were fortunate recently to participate in a pilot program. And we had our local police agencies in Dufferin participate, as well as a number of our community partners. And the nice part about this model was we were able to have mental health workers attend on scene with police, and that's kind of a first. And we really championed this resource, and on 12 different occasions during this pilot, we had mental health support on scene with police, which was phenomenal, and I think it had a real significant impact. The CMHA pilot took place from January 2020 to the end of March. And in that period, we achieved a 17% reduction in the number of people who had to be taken to hospital in comparison to the same period last year. And that's a significant reduction. We all know that taking people to the ER department isn't necessarily the best outcome for persons who are suffering from mental health. So having mental health workers attend on scene with police, assist in de-escalation. We had situations, just to give you a couple scenarios of how this worked. We had a 51-year-old mother who was suicidal. We had CMHA attend on scene. They were able to de-escalate her, do safety planning with her, pull in another family member to support her, and as a result, she didn't have to be taken to hospital. We had a 73-year-old gentleman who was suffering from hallucinations, where he would hallucinate that there was smoke in the residence, and he would, I think on 6 different occasions, call the fire department. This person wasn't in crises, but we were able to determine that there was something going on here, and we needed the assistance of someone who could properly assess him. So we had our local seniors at risk counselor attend on scene, and through consultation with the family, the person was taken to hospital and their family doctor was involved. We had a young gal who was suffering from postpartum depression, locked herself in a bathroom, had a knife. Again, we were able to have CMHA on side with us and de-escalate the situation. So it's working extremely well. The problem is, though, that with most of these programs, the funding is short. So this pilot project worked from January to March 31st. And I do my best to champion these programs, and our frontline officers are fantastic at utilizing these resources, but then all of a sudden the program's done. And I think what the message we want to get across to the ministry is that we need more long-term planning. You can't throw a resource in and then take it away 3 months later, because then it loses integrity. If we want our front line to utilize these resources, we got to know they're available when we need them. And you know, if it's 1 week, call this resource, and then next month it's not available, or call 1-800 number and then you get put on hold, that doesn't work for us. So that's the message we want to try and get across to the ministry. And I think as as a police service board, that's the sort of message that we want to get across, is that we need consistent resources available, and we're more than happy to work with our community partners. To be able to utilize these resources and have better outcomes for some of the most vulnerable people in our community is just a win-win all around.
Sergeant Archer, if I may ask, what is your experience and your opinion on what is happening with the pandemic and, you know, the state of people, and how are we going to progress here, and how are we progressing is probably a more fair question, but any thoughts on that?
Initially, we saw a decline in the mental health occurrences, but now we're starting to see that increase again. Our ability to respond to mental health occurrences has not changed. Our officers are trained and fully protected with the appropriate PPE. And so are our mental health workers who have come on scene with us despite COVID. So we're well prepared to deal with it as we see an increase in volume of mental health occurrences as we move forward and come out of the COVID pandemic.
Great. Any other questions for Mary Lou?
Mr. Chair, it's Ian. I have one. Mary Lou, my question is on question 12 in the survey. Just want to make sure I understood it. So question 10 asks about FTEs who are members of the police service on the collaborative response team, and we say 1. And then question 11 says FTEs who are mental health professionals on the collaborative response team, currently 2. And then how many teams do you have on a shift at once? And then it was 0. So I take that means that we have members of our teams, we don't put them out on shift, but they're available on call. Is that what that means?
Yes. So question 10, the FTE for members of the service who are part of the collaborative response team, I included myself because I am focused on mental health. The 2 FTEs for mental health professionals, currently as part of this pilot, we had 2 full-time mental health workers available to us, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. So that's where I came up with the 2 FTEs. So then question 12, how many teams do you have on shift at once? The question's really referring to, you know, the IMCERT model or the COAST model. As far as having teams on shift, whereas all our frontline officers are trained in mental health and de-escalation and utilizing the Health IM tool. We don't have a specific team on each shift, but all our frontline officers are trained.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, great. Any other further questions?
No, it's very interesting.
It really is. And my comment would be is, boy, was that ever a large survey like that? It took some time and some depth of thought to put that forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you, Mary Lou.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Okay. So I think, do we need a motion to receive that report, Secretary?
Sorry, I was just on mute. Yes, if we could have a motion on that, please, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Ken, I'll be happy to move it.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Member Rose, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so I think we're on to 6.7, which is the OPP Detachment Board composition. And this was sent to us. Is a pretty good summary talking about what we need to do in terms of an OPP detachment board. And, you know, there's 4 points at the bottom of the letter here that I think describe it all, which for the most part we're doing now. And I can't imagine why we would be in conflict in the future. Does anybody have any commentary on this?
Ken, my only question is, with Shelburne going OPP now, do you guys think that the government will amalgamate all of Dufferin into one board? And if so, what will that look like?
Yeah, there has been chatter about that. My feeling is that Orangeville would be independent for some time, but I don't know. Anyone else have any commentary? No, it'd be my intention. My belief, candidly, is that our little area is quite different from the rest of Dufferin, and I think that we should be on our own.
So I would expect there would be some sort of consultation process in advance of that. I would hope.
Yeah. Okay. So, we have a motion to receive that document, the OPP Detachment Board composition.
I'll move that.
Okay. Member Brown, Member Rose, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We are on to item 6.8, and are you speaking to this one, Chief?
I am. Yes, thank you very much.
Nice. Nice. Well, you got up and left last time when I was ready to call on you. It's didn't know what to do there for a minute.
Well, I had a bio break and I just couldn't interrupt. I had to do what I had to do.
You're welcome to do so.
Thank you. So I want to talk about the 2020-2021 RIDE grant that was submitted by us, the Orangeville Police Service, on June 26th. And we should hear sometime in October. This is transferable to the Ontario Provincial Police. In past years, we have received amounts determined on our sworn strength and the population, but it does vary somewhere between $10,000 and $13,000. I have the exact breakdown from 2015, but we don't know at the end of the day what we will receive as a grant. We utilize that money to send out staff to do RIDE programs at various times, locations throughout the holiday season. The Staff Sergeant of Operations, David McLagan, has determined or determines when and where and who goes out at what point in time. This does not affect our strength at all. It's a paid overtime to staff members to go out, whether it's morning, but mainly afternoon and evenings on during the week and on the weekends. I'm available for any questions.
Mr. Chair, I had one. Chief, given that we're entering phase 3, are you anticipating any celebratory increase in the amount of drinking and driving, and perhaps considering an enhanced police response to that? It's like Christmas in July. I haven't heard anything, but it just struck me that people are being released from their cages, and drinking and driving could become more of a problem.
So drinking and driving is something that our officers focus on each and every shift. We have enhanced RIDE programs during celebratory events, such as sporting events, throughout the year, and we will monitor what happens. We'll know pretty quickly what happens in our bars and in our drinking establishments, and we will definitely respond appropriately.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for the Chief on the RIDE grant application? No. And I guess, Chief, just for me, that's a historical practice, right? We've always done that. Obviously, this board wouldn't have seen that because most of us are new, but it's a fairly regular thing that you would have to apply for this. And
we've applied for it since its inception in 2015. As an example, in 2015, we received $13,615. And each year thereafter, we continue to apply for those grants. When we applied for this grant, we made sure that it was transferable, and we received those ministry confirmations, and we continue to do RIDE.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chief. Okay. I guess, do we need a motion to receive that report too, Madam Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll move, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Have a seconder, please.
Mary?
Thank you, Member Rose. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. There was an add to this agenda that was sent out, 6-9, which is claim forms for approval. Karen or Ian, did you want to speak to this?
I'm happy to speak.
Carrie, excuse me. I'm getting tired, I think.
I'm
Sorry.
happy to speak to it, Mr. Chair. So these are just following what we did in our last meeting. These are claim forms under our new policy that relate to the ongoing alignment meetings that Carrie and the chair and I have prior to meetings, just to make sure that we have our ducks in order. And the second claim relating to July 20th, so that was June 16th. Second claim relating to July 20th was a meeting that we had with council and others in the town to discuss our mediation strategy.
Okay. Any questions from fellow board members? Thank you.
Actually, Ken, I have one. Last meeting, I questioned about the alignment meetings, and I was told that these ones would be phasing out. So my question is, when do you expect these alignment meetings to be phased out? Particularly as
I'd speak for myself, and that is we are working with Carrie on a weekly basis, and she's very capable. There's nothing, no judgment on Carrie here. It's just she's new to the position. I would anticipate we would do the same thing again next month. We did that process a few days ago. Post that, I don't know. We'll it's going to end at some point, Ken.
Okay.
But, I think we're trying to be efficient, right? People are new in role, and I don't think it's fair to leave them.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying that, you know.
What are you saying?
No, sorry, she's capable. No, she is capable of continuing to do it. I mean, I just don't see the purpose of continuously to meet just to do an agenda, but I understand she's new. You want to make sure she's up to par?
Yeah. The board, in my view, and I don't speak for Ian, this is just me, but the board can deny the expense. What we're trying to do is be transparent about what we're doing sidebar. I think it would be strange to have members meeting without the rest of the members knowing why you're meeting. So denying the expense would be just fine. But I'd still like to, in the terms of transparency, say, hey, we're having these sidebar meetings. I've been very upfront. It's not the funding that I'm necessarily interested in. I just want transparency within the board. So, since doesn't look like there's any other further commentary, motion to receive.
So moved.
Member Rose, can I have a seconder, please?
A second. So these are for approval.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Okay, seconded by Member McSweeney. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Okay. Thank you, everyone. So that brings us on to item 7, and that's to pass any motions developed in closed session. There were no motions that needed to be passed from closed session, which brings us to item 8. And fellow board members, what I would like to do is there is some issues with the meeting minutes. I would like to move this to a separate meeting, and as I think about it, there's some, in my mind, some urgency that we get these posted. I wonder if it might be of interest to the board if we had a special meeting and simply met and got these things off, because they really need to go to council and be posted on the website for public consumption. How would board members feel about that?
I'm fine with that.
I'd be okay with that, as well as we also agreed to that we'd be posting the remuneration for board members online for openness and transparency. So we also put that in as well.
So we are doing that. I think that's all
I
right.
don't think it's on. I haven't seen it online yet for the last ones we've approved.
Right, but I think we agreed that would be that
Yeah.
would happen.
Okay. Any further comments on that?
No.
Okay, so I will call a special meeting to ensure that these things get looked after, and we'll get them posted. So I'll do that as a follow-up. Just going to make a note here, everyone. Give me a moment. Okay, so that brings us on to item 9, and it's the accounts and financial statements. Fellow board members, any questions or comments? And I did preface for those who are watching that our treasurer was not able to join us tonight. So what the board has agreed to do is if there are questions from the public or from the board, we will attempt to answer them, but we will also make a list and bring them back to the treasurer if the board or the chief or the deputy is unable to provide guidance on them. So knowing that, I'll turn it back. Board members, is there any questions regarding the financials? No? Okay. Seeing none, could I have a motion to receive the financials?
So moved.
I'll second.
Member Rhodes, Member Brown, thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, everyone. That's carried. So that brings us on to 10, which is question period. Dan, do we have any questions at this time?
I have one.
Okay.
Yes, we do have a member on the line, and we have Councillor Sherwood on the line, and we also have a member of the public on the line. So,
I'd like a question.
Well, why don't we go with the public first, and Councillor Sherwood will hold you for second. How's that? Member of the public, could you identify yourself? And
Yes, it's Noel Ramsey. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Appreciated the update from the Chief Superintendent there. And my question is, there's kind of, I'm interested in how, as we go forward with this transition, how the public will be kept appraised of what is happening, the changes that are being made, officers that are being kept. Now, I understand that there may be some confidentiality issues, sorry. But I know some of the members of the public were very concerned that we're going to be losing a lot of the local officers. So I think it would be comforting for them to know who's staying around, what kind of transition, what the transition is looking like. Now, I don't know if this information comes from the board or from council. The chief superintendent talked about having like an open house, you know, when COVID things settle down for the public, but just how, if there's any plans to develop, if there's any concept to develop plans to communicate with the public on the progress. The other thing being that some members of the public would like to see some practices maybe modified, changed, reduced, or enhancements. I don't know if the enhancements that the OPP will be bringing will be something that's only in the 3rd to 4th year or in the model, or is it something that the town would be requesting as they start, you know, additional foot patrol or how that works. But some of the members of the public would like to see certain enhancements improved. I know we've got certain exposures on our street that we're concerned about with regards to amount of security protection. And I'm just wondering if we were going to have an opportunity to talk to the detectives or the superintendent in the detachment to express what we would like to see. Do we have to go through the council and or through the board for those?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. I think I can answer part of that, and then Member Brown, Mayor Brown, maybe you could help me with the other part. And the first part of that is, you know, Andrea McKinney was on here and basically had said that, you know, the interview process is ongoing, and that we would find out shortly who those officers are that are with us. So I know there is a curiosity and almost a kind of a hug that's going out to those officers and wanting the best for them, and wanting to find out what's happening and who's staying and who's not. So I know that information will come out soon, but in fairness, there's an interview process that's ongoing right now that's confidential, and I imagine those people are, stressed and trying to find their way. So as soon as that is done, there will be an announcement from the town in terms of how that will go. And I don't know, Mayor Brown, if that is something that you would be involved in,
if
or
I'm
how
not
that would
mistaken,
go.
Chair Taylor, Chief Superintendent said that offers of employment will be sent out the first week of September. So I don't think that we're going to have any knowledge of who has been hired until that time.
Agreed. I completely align with that comment. It's just the more to Mr. Ramsey's comment about how will we know who they are. It's going to be a bit of a process, right?
I think it's all it's human resources, and there's privacy involved, and I don't imagine that the records and who is hired by a police service are ever made public, whether it's the OPS or the OPP. I don't think that information will ever be coming out, frankly. So,
hear you, but we're going to have. I don't disagree with your commentary. However, we are all going to be very interested to know where some of these Orangeville officers are, and that will come out at some point.
Yeah, I think the numbers. I mean, I've heard 31, I think, have applied. I imagine we're going to hear the raw numbers of how many OPS officers have been offered employment. Yeah. But other than that, as far as who they are, I don't imagine that's going to be released unless that officer themselves wants that information released. So, but I think the numbers will be released at some point.
Yeah. And then in terms of public consultations and linking in with Acting Inspector Randall and Mr. Pierre, it sounds like they are open to scheduling some sort of session and having a public relations meeting, which, this board will follow up on and certainly encourage. I think he was spot on in the way he was approaching that. And, we don't want the board and the politicians just talking to these individuals. We want the people talking to these individuals and hearing what their thoughts are as well. So
I would hope
that.
I would hope, Chair Taylor, that we can invite those people to a town council meeting as well sometime in the future.
Agreed, because that linkage needs to be established as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Mr. Ramsey, did we fumbled as best we could there? Did we answer your question?
Yeah, as Mayor Brown was mentioning, just even knowing the percentage, like 75% of them came over, I think because a lot of people had concerns that, we're going to lose them all, or none of them are going to be accepted. It'd be comforting to know that, we got a significant number of the young men, that these young men have come over still. The other aspect is the enhancements. Like I said, increasing certain coverage or policing in certain areas, that type of aspect. When you talk about, I think the phrase they used was enhancements, but also my concern is just if there's a public relations contact that they will make available to us to say, we have a concern on this street where we've had a number of break-ins, and we're very concerned about the coverage. I assume we would go straight to the police on that as a community versus having to go through the council or the board. But if we do that, it could drive cost, and I don't know how that works.
Yeah, just my personal opinion, I get lots of folks that are contacting me about police issues. And I also know that the chief and deputy have lots of folks approaching them directly as well. So I don't know, Chief, would you have any mentoring for us on that? Like, it seems like it's whatever works best as opposed to a process.
Well, now people contact us directly, council contacts us directly, and we will ensure that the issue is looked after and resolved. And I defer everything post October 1st to the OPP.
That's fair. So we'll have to work through that. I must admit, Mr. Ramsey, I've been very used to the system that we have worked on with OPS now, and I'm looking forward to being schooled on how we can continue to help the residents and work best with OPP. And I don't know the path for that just yet, but I'm sure there will be an easy one for us. Did you have anything further, Mr. Ramsey, or are we?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining our meeting. Councillor Sherwood, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. One of the things I wanted to ask was, has the board discussed with the OPP on applications for grants? Chief Klinsky just mentioned about a grant application for the RIDE program, and I want to ensure that we're not missing any opportunities for any grant applications when we transition to OPP. So will that be the onus on staff to look for grant applications, or will there be somebody at the OPP that will look after getting grants so that we don't miss any funding opportunities?
Chief Klinsky, I'll try and answer this, and then maybe you could help me if we could. But OPS has been working to secure funding as per normal channels and operating in that normal fashion. I imagine moving forward, the OPP would do the same. But to my knowledge, we haven't missed a beat in terms of applying for grants and that sort of thing. But post, the Guilfoyle and Klinsky years, we're going to have to find out exactly how that's going to work. Chief, would you have any further thoughts on that? Is that a fair representation that I just gave?
That's a fair representation, and we will continue to apply for grants as they come into the Orangeville Police Service right up until our final goodbye. And I would make the assumption that our friends in the OPP would be picking up after October 1st and continuing along that vein. I can tell you that we are still anticipating a court security grant that will be coming into the Orangeville Police Service, and that is in excess of $500,000 for the first 6 months of this year. Once we receive that, we receive an application process for the last 6 months. We'll apply for that as well. So I think Orangeville Police is in very good shape financially as it comes to grants, and we apply for as many of them as we're eligible for.
Thank you very much, Chief Klinsky. I very much appreciate you and staff making sure that funding availabilities are still applied for and received. So to you, Chair Taylor, I'm just asking that the board make sure that this continues with the OPP and that we do not miss out on any opportunities for any type of funding, whether that be delegated to a town staff member or to OPP. Just a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Okay, is there any other questions for the board? Okay, hearing none. 11, we have no presentations at this time. 12, there are no delegations. And 13, we do not have correspondence today. However, we do have some reports. So 14.1, Chief Klinsky, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you. It's about members of the Orangeville Police Service, and 14.1 is with regards to our Freedom of Information Coordinator. We have advised her that her services will not be required post-October 1st, 2020, and she's actually resigned effective August 1st, 2020. So we are without a Freedom of Information Coordinator, but we will get through this.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief on this item? No? Madam Secretary, do I need to receive that, or is it just an information?
I think we do need to receive it, Mr. Chair, but I don't know if you want to wait till the end and receive all reports at the same time, or if you want to do them individually.
Thank you. Let's do it at the end then. Okay, so item 14.2, Chief. By the way, I feel I feel inclined to say Melody Greenlee has been a long-time contributor to this force and has done numerous wonderful things. So I thank her for her service, and she'll be missed.
She does a fantastic job. Yes, thank you.
And she's quite a bagpipe player.
I saw her bagpipes today when I had conversation with her. Thank you. She is.
Okay, so Chief, to item 14.2.
14.2 involves a part-time student that we had under our employment, doing some filing, doing some scanning, doing some photocopying. Her tenure with the Orangeville Police Service was completed on March 23rd, 2020, and we thank her for the job that she did and bring the perspectives to us from a student's viewpoint.
Very good. Any questions for the Chief on 14.2? No? Seeing none? Okay, so 14.3.
14.3 involves the resignation of a part-time communicator that resigned effective June 28, 2020, and we thank her for her service to the Orangeville Police.
Chief, hopefully Chelsea's found something that's of interest to her and compelling. Okay, any questions for the Chief on this item?
No.
No, seeing none. On to 14.4.
Thank you. I want to advise the board that our fire contracts for communications for dispatching fire departments will transition to the town of Tillsonburg effective July 27th, 2020. This involves the in alphabetical order, the Grand Valley Fire Service, the Mulmer-Melancton Fire Service, the Orangeville Fire Service, and the Shelburne Fire Service.
Very good. Any questions from the board on this item? No. No? Okay. Seeing none. Let's move on to 14.5, please, Chief.
Thank you. 14.5 involves a report from 5 separate members of the public thanking the Orangeville Police for their service in relation to various aspects. In particular, I want to recognize Constable Nick Michlowski, Records Clerk Vicki Moore, and Frontline Officer Constable Tom DeLeese for their good work resulting in comments from the public.
That's excellent. Any commentary from the board on that? No.
All good news.
Okay. Very nice. Chief, I love those updates. Some of them are difficult, but it's great to celebrate the staff and the wonderful good work that they've done for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's item 14.5. Could I have a motion to receive items 14.1 through 14.5, please?
So moved.
Member Rose, Member Brown, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Everyone. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay. Is there any items under new business, folks? No?
I don't have anything, Mr. Chair, that was sent in.
Very good. Okay, everyone. It was a fairly succinct meeting and incredibly interesting with some information that we received. So thank you, everyone, for a great meeting. Could we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Very good. Member Rose, Member Brown, all in favor?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Chief, I'm just going to give you a